Benvenuti su una nuova puntata di Meeting Coffee. Meeting Coffee è il format delle dirette di Meeting Funnel, il portale di business network per le imprese italiane. Oggi abbiamo due graditi ospiti, il Mr. Dhruv Chhatralia, partner corporate responsabile di Venture Capital UK e responsabile di DWF, e un gradito ritorno Alessandro Medri, segretario generale di IBF India Italy. E lascerò a loro questa intervista che sarà tutta in inglese e poi con i sottotitoli ovviamente in italiano. Welcome to Mr. Dhruv to Meeting Funnel, it's a pleasure to have you here e benvenuto di nuovo Alessandro e vi lascio a questa intervista che poi sarà presentata, appunto condivisa nei canali di Meeting Funnel, appunto nella sezione Meeting Coffee per le condivisioni con le aziende. Quindi buona intervista e ci vediamo tra poco.
Grazie mille Luca, sono felicissimo di essere qui di nuovo su Meeting Coffee e non vediamo l'ora adesso di procedere con questa intervista. Adesso farò uno switch veloce in inglese e il resto dell'intervista sarà in inglese. So as I was saying, thank you Luca for having us again. We're very much looking forward to this interview with Mr. Dhruv Chhatralia calling us from London today. And as always, I am doing this interview on behalf of IBF Italy, and we are looking to cover more contents of interest in the Indian market, which is one of the most fast-growing and exciting markets that we are looking at nowadays. So I would like to welcome Mr. Dhruv, and if you could tell us about yourself, some quick introduction, that would be great to tell our audience.
Thank you very much, Luca and Alessandro, and great to be here on this interview, and nice to meet everyone, and welcome to our viewers as well. So my name is Dhruv Chhatralia. I'm a partner, head of venture capital, head of India-Group at international law firm DWF. So my practice spans from mergers and acquisitions, private equity and venture capital. I do work across different regions, and I also have a focus on India as well, assisting Indian companies and high net worth individuals and families together with financial institutions on their outbound work from India in the offices where we're based at DWF. So DWF is an international law firm with offices in 32 countries around the world. We've got over 5,000 people across those offices, and we're a full service firm covering everything from corporate banking, transactional work to dispute resolution, to various different regulatory areas from employment and pensions to tax, intellectual property, data protection, and also intellectual property as well. So broad offering we've got, and we assist Indian clients across the geographies where we're based, ranging from kind of UK, Spain, France, Italy, Germany, also in Middle East, in North America and Australia as well. Particularly with the outbound work, we've assisted in clients on various acquisitions, investments, as well as dispute resolution and regulatory matters as well. We're one of the leading international law firms advising on Indian clients. We've been ranked by the Indian Business Law Journal as one of the international law firms to watch for India-related work. I myself have personally been ranked as one of the leading kind of A-list or foreign lawyers assisting Indian clients on outbound matters. So we got 47 nominations from general counsels and Indian law firms as well. We don't advise on Indian law, but we work on the outbound matters for Indian clients. It's a great group. We've got over 115 lawyers in the India Group, so it's the largest India Group of any international law firm outside India. We cover 16 practice areas, 9 sector groups, and also 9 geographies as well. We cover 7 different Indian languages as well in the India Group, so very strong cultural connections with clients, and we've been given numerous awards for our work related to India. So hopefully that's a helpful introduction.
I'd say that was quite the comprehensive introduction. I think you got the idea across as to what you guys do in India especially. And also there's something I wanted to mention as well. From what I've read on your profile, you're actually the head of the DWF's India Group. So I wanted to also expand on that a little bit, because obviously our main focus is the Indian market. So what is the India Group? And obviously I'm assuming it works in the country, but like how does that work? What its main goal is, and also have like maybe a quick idea of what the type of like clients you serve? Because you mentioned high net worth individuals, but I'm assuming there's private equity and similar things as well.
Yeah, sure. So we're a leading legal advisor to Indian companies, financial institutions, and also high net worth individuals and families. So we've got decades of extensive experience in guiding Indian clients in respect of outbound legal work. So we've got a team of experts and specialists that empower Indian-focused and Indian-based clients to help with their strategic objectives. So we're the largest India group of any international law firm outside India. We advise clients on high-profile, significant cross-border transactions, projects, disputes, and regulatory work across Europe, Asia, North America, and Australia. And our clients in the industry include Indian companies, financial institutions, high net worth individuals, and families. And we're one of the leading international law firms advising international clients and India clients on India-related matters. So we offer kind of expertise across a wide spectrum of India-related matters. So we don't practice Indian law as per the country's regulatory framework, but we have strong relationships with leading Indian law firms with whom we work together to provide the seamless service to our clients. We're a truly international law firm with the offices we've got across 4 continents. So it's kind of seamless cross-border advice and project management we offer to Indian clients, and also multinational clients working on matters related to India across our international network. We've built really strong relationships with several Indian corporates, financial institutions, high net worth individuals and families, and we've helped navigate them across various international markets. Our lawyers travel to India regularly as part of their work. We spent time visiting our clients and learning more about their businesses and the wider Indian economy in general. So as a result, several of them have been long-standing clients of ours for decades. We've also kind of, in terms of individually, we've been shortlisted for the award of Legal Practice of the Year at the 6th Annual UK India Awards in 2024 based on the achievements of our group. And we were ranked as an international firm to watch by the Indian Business Law Journal. I was also listed at the top of the Indian Business Law Journal's international A-list, featuring the world's top tier international lawyers outside India. And I received 47 nominations from general counsels and lawyers, which was the most of any lawyer in an international law firm, for work on cross-border aspects of India-related matters. And of course, over here, the India-Italy Business Initiatives, Gianna Vecchiarello, a director in our Milan office and our co-head of banking and finance in Italy. Success.
And also, may I add, president of IBF too.
Exactly.
Since you're at area.
Yes.
And okay, so basically, just to like summarize what you have just said, you work with large Indian corporates or high net worth individuals, financial institutions who are looking to do large transactions cross border. Is that correct?
Yes, that's exactly right. So we act on large transactions as well as smaller ones as well.
Okay. So usually we're talking about investment coming from India abroad, because the interesting fact is that usually, at least in our line of work, we look at a lot at investment going into India because it's a fast-growing economy, of course, and people often don't think about it the other way around. But in reality, especially in the UK, Indian companies and institutions do have quite a large footprint. But from an Italian perspective, most of the investment goes in the other direction. So speaking of that, since it's a topic that here in Italy especially, we don't really think about too often, I think it's interesting if you could give us like a rundown of if there's any sectors in particular that you think right now when it comes to these transactions are of high interest to your clients, or if you could just give us like maybe a few examples as to what typically your clients would be looking for when doing these kinds of transactions abroad.
Yeah, sure. In terms of obviously kind of the venture capital and private equity sectors in India, in terms of the key trends and outlook relating to them. So both India's venture capital and private equity sectors have undergone a transformative evolution in the past 2 decades. So from a relatively nascent ecosystem in the early 2000s, India's emerged as one of the most dynamic and attractive destinations for capital in Asia. The country's robust macroeconomic fundamentals, demographic dividend, and also digital transformation have created a fertile ground for innovation and entrepreneurship, which in turn have attracted significant interest, as you said, from global and domestic investors. So The Indian PE and VC ecosystem is characterized by a diverse mix of investors, including global PE funds, sovereign wealth funds, pension funds, family offices, and domestic institutional investors. So the investment landscape spans from various stages of business growth, from seed and early stage funding to growth capital and large buyouts. In recent years, there's been a marked increase in the size of frequency of mega deals, as you mentioned, particularly in sectors such as technology, financial services, healthcare, and consumer goods. So I'd say key trends shaping the Indian PE and VC landscape, they include, firstly, sector diversification. So with technology and e-commerce continuing to dominate, there's growing investor interest in emerging sectors such as climate tech, agri-tech, health tech, and deep tech. The renewable energy sector in particular has seen a surge in investments driven by India's commitment to sustainability and clean energy. There's also, secondly, a rise of domestic capital. Indian family offices and high net worth individuals are increasingly participating in the PE VC space, either through directly or alternative investment funds or AIFs. So this trend is contributing to deepening the domestic capital pool. Thirdly, exit maturity. So the Indian markets witnessed a significant improvement in exit opportunities with a rise in secondary sales, strategic acquisitions, and public market listings. So the success of IPOs by tech startups has boosted investor confidence even more. Fourth has been regulatory reform. So the Indian government and regulatory bodies such as SEBI and RBI have introduced several reforms to enhance transparency, ease of doing business, and investor protection. So these have included streamlined AIF regulations, simplified FDI norms, and tax incentives for startups. And finally, geographic expansion. So investors are increasingly looking beyond the traditional metro cities to tap into opportunities to tier 2 and tier 3 cities. So these regions offer untapped markets, lower operational costs, and a growing pool of talent. So the outlook for the Indian private equity and venture capital sector remains positive, supported by strong economic growth, digital adoption, and a vibrant entrepreneurial ecosystem. And as India continues to integrate with the global economy, the role of private capital is driving innovation, job creation, and inclusive growth, which will be very much more critical as well.
Yeah, I mean, what you have said has, rung true in many cases, because we do see this happening quite often in India, and especially you mentioned, most interestingly, the tier 2 cities, because obviously everybody's familiar with Mumbai and Delhi, but then you have all these others, urban centers, which have become, hubs of innovation. I myself have lived in Hyderabad for several years, and you could consider that a tier 2 city, but you could see the Google campuses being built there, Infosys, where I think they were building new offices. So you have this sustained growth. And also the fact that you mentioned the venture capital market in India has reached a certain level of maturity, which is definitely something people don't really think about very often, especially from an outside perspective. But on how this market has been able to nurture startups in India. And I believe India's fourth or third when it comes to unicorns startups. So I think this is starting to reflect itself. When it comes instead to investing outside of India, from the Indian, when it comes to Indian capital flowing outside, what kind of investments usually your clients are looking for in the UK, Europe, or wherever you may work? What is there typically, what would be a case study of this that you have worked with, maybe some examples in that sense?
Yeah, sure. So Indian investors, which basically includes venture capitalists and private equity firms, family offices, high net worth individuals, are definitely increasingly looking to Europe for strategic investment opportunities. So their interests are driven by a desire to diversify portfolios, accessing advanced technologies, and also establishing a global footprint. So key areas of interest that we've seen is, first of all, technology innovation. So Indian investors are particularly keen on investing in European startups and scale-ups in sectors such as AI, fintech, health tech, cybersecurity we've seen. These investments provide access to cutting-edge technologies and also intellectual property that can be leveraged in the Indian market. Second is ESG and sustainability. So there's a growing emphasis on environmental, social, and governance criteria amongst Indian investors. Europe's leadership in sustainable investing in green technologies makes it a very attractive destination for impact-orientated capital from India. Thirdly, we've seen a lot of strategic acquisitions. So Indian corporates and private equity firms are pursuing acquisitions in Europe to gain market access, expand their product offerings, and enhance operational capabilities. Sectors that we've seen of particular interest include pharmaceuticals, automotive components. We've done a few deals in that area, and also industrial manufacturing. And finally, I'd say kind of real estate and infrastructure. So Indian family offices are exploring opportunities in European real estate, logistics and infrastructure projects, particularly in countries with stable regulatory environments and attractive yields. So we've seen a lot from the family offices there, from the hotel companies as well. But really interesting, conversely, European investors, and you touched on this earlier, are being increasingly drawn to India's high growth economy, and also because India's got a vibrant startup ecosystem. And the interest investments from Europe include consumer market access, because India's got a population of 1.4 billion, also growing middle class. There's big opportunities in consumer goods, retail and digital services, also digital economy. European venture capital funds and investors are actively investing in Indian startups. We've seen investments in fintech, edtech, SaaS, and e-commerce. So co-investment models and strategic partnerships with Indian firms are becoming more common. We're also seeing infrastructure and energy, so European institutional investors participating in India's infrastructure development, including renewable energy, transportation, smart cities. The Indian government's focus a lot on public-private partnerships, PPPs, which has created like a conducive environment for these investments, and also the manufacturing and supply chain. So as companies seek to diversify supply chains post-COVID, India's definitely emerging as a key manufacturing hub. European investors are exploring joint ventures, also greenfield investments in sectors such as electronics, automotive again, and chemicals. So overall, the investment relationship between India and Europe is becoming more strategic, with a focus on long-term value creation, innovation and sustainability as well.
And I completely agree. It's funny that you mentioned also the energy sector, because and PPPs, because that used to be my old sector actually when I worked in India. So quite familiar with that. I have worked with a few private equity firms that were investing from Europe to India. So it all resonated quite a bit with me. Also, I think it's very interesting that you touched upon investment from India in the sectors that Indian investors would be interested in, because I'm gonna like circle back to Italy in this case. In Italy, India's maybe appearing a little bit more on the radar now, but when it comes to raising capital, it's not necessarily what a company might think about first, but maybe if it's covered, especially when it comes to the technology, as you mentioned. And there are many, many medium to small Italian companies that have some very interesting proprietary technology. And in many cases, they're looking to either sell the company or maybe raise some capital to expand. I think India is fast becoming, as you mentioned, like an interesting opportunity when it comes to raising that kind of capital, because there is a high demand for know-how and technology, which comes along with the growth, essentially. It is something that we have seen as well quite often. So, and you mentioned also investment in India. Of course, right now, things, given the size of the country and the potential of the market, I think it's something that any like serious like venture capitalist or investor should of course look at, because it has tremendous opportunity. So it's definitely something that is of interest, no matter what your position is. Since you mentioned, since we're talking about these kinds of investments, obviously there's the regulatory aspect of it. Of course, India is known for being what sometimes can be difficult from a regulatory standpoint. It can be complicated. From an Italian perspective, it is a very familiar thing because Italy has its own, let's just say, complicated bureaucracy. So have you had any challenges? Are there any specific like pitfalls that you can point at when it comes to these kinds of transactions between, India and Europe, or India and the UK?
Absolutely, yeah. So cross-border transactions we've seen between India and the UK and EU are influenced by a really complex web of regulatory, legal and policy issues. So these constraints can impact deal structuring, the timelines. We've seen compliance requirements need to be kind of adhered to. But the key kind of regulatory and policy factors we've seen are, first of all, the foreign direct investment policy. So India's FDI regime is very sector specific, with varying levels of permissive foreign ownership and approval requirements. While many sectors are under the automatic route, others such as defense, telecoms and insurance require prior government approval. So recent amendments have also introduced restrictions on investments from countries sharing land borders with India, which will affect deal timetables and structuring as well. We've also seen exchange control regulations. So the Foreign Exchange Management Act, which is FEMA, governs cross-border capital flows, including investment, repatriation and pricing norms. So compliance with the FEMA regulations is critical for both inbound and outbound investments. So issues such as valuation, reporting and end-use restrictions have to be carefully navigated. Third, everyone's favorite word, taxation. India's tax regime has undergone significant changes, including the introduction of the General Anti-Avoidance Rule, GAR, changes to capital gains taxation and equalization levy on digital transactions. So these changes have implications for deal structuring, especially in the context of treaty benefits, indirect transfers. Very famously, data protection and privacy. So the divergence between the EU's GDPR regulation and India's digital personal data protection DPDP Act can create compliance challenges for cross-border data transfers in digital businesses. So companies have to implement robust data governance frameworks to mitigate regulatory risks. There's also investment screening and national security. So the EU, several EU member states in the UK have introduced investment screening mechanisms to protect strategic sectors. So these regimes can delay or block transactions involving sensitive technologies or critical infrastructure. There's also the issue of dispute resolution and enforcement. So differences in legal systems, enforcement of arbitral awards and judicial efficiency can definitely impact investor confidence. So while India is a signatory to the New York Convention, enforcement of foreign arbitral awards can be time-consuming from what we've seen. But despite these challenges, cross-border transactions definitely continue to thrive. They've been supported by legal innovations such as hybrid instruments, intermediate jurisdictions, and also bilateral investment treaties. And legal advisors like us play a crucial role in navigating these complexities and ensuring that regulatory compliance is done.
Of course. And actually, since as you were talking, there's also a question I always get from companies that are looking to invest in India. And you mentioned it before, intellectual property, because that is always a concern that comes when it comes to like establishing, it could be an office or a production unit in India. There's always a little bit of a concern. Now, could you maybe give us a quick rundown also on that aspect, on how intellectual property is protected for, in case of your clients or for any company that is like looking to sell their brand, access that market essentially?
Yeah, so normally when there's intellectual property issues in respect of India, we normally advise local Indian law firms that we work with because we're restricted in providing advice in terms of Indian law. But yeah, from what we've experienced, the laws kind of very much replicate a lot of the international laws, but India's got its own regime in terms of intellectual protection, ranging from patents to trademarks and know-how and passing off as well. I think, the key things are passing off, which is really commonly recognized in the UK. It's not so well recognized in jurisdictions outside the UK, including in India. So I think the key is getting an Indian law firm to provide that local law advice and making sure that intellectual property is protected. It's getting a bit more trickier nowadays because you've got various forms of artificial intelligence and the copyright ownership around that becomes a bit more blurry. So the Indian regulations are constantly being updated to meet that. The challenges, for example, come from artistic works and so on, and how artificial intelligence can capture it, and some technologies which block artificial intelligence from recording data as well. So those are becoming very popular, and that gives rise to a lot of intellectual property issues. So I think, I would definitely recommend getting local law advice in India for intellectual property issues.
Well, I definitely agree with that recommendation. It's a question we always get as well, and I think it's a very important thing to always cover. And since we were talking about the regulatory framework and what is in place now, so what do you think the regulatory outlook is? Is the government right now facilitating these kinds of transactions when it comes to future reforms and also trade agreements that we'll touch upon as well? Do you think the trend right now is in favor of liberalizing and making things easier for these types of transactions?
Yeah, so it's kind of a dual regime we've got. On the one hand, we've got various trade wars taking place around the world with different countries, whereas some countries are being a bit more conciliatory and compromising towards them. India's probably one of them. So, for example, when the US trade wars kicked off with certain countries, India kind of passed conciliatory measures in terms of tariffs on US goods, which resulted in a lot of progress between the US and India in terms of the trade agreement. And we're seeing a lot more bilateral trade treaties being negotiated. There was one signed between India, Liechtenstein, Iceland, Norway and Switzerland, which is really interesting, which was one of the first treaties to have an obligation of FDI into India, which was really remarkable how that was negotiated. So we're definitely seeing a bit more of a conciliatory and bilateral approach to trade, and in terms of ease of doing cross-border transactions, that's definitely been India's approach. But one big difference is India's kind of negotiating as an equal partner, which is why it's entering into these treaties and trade agreements now, because they can negotiate on an even footing. So I think it's been very positive in that respect. India's been very keen to do cross-border trade and enter into bilateral agreements as well.
Since you mentioned bilateral agreements, obviously the UK just signed one as well. When it comes to European Union, there's been one in negotiation for a very long time, we can say, and we're crossing our fingers that it'll actually come to a head and they'll actually sign it. But do you have could you give us a rundown what you think about the agreement between the EU and India and how it could impact, essentially which sectors it could impact and what could its impact be if it's signed this year? Fingers crossed, but we'll see when it's signed.
Okay, fine. Yeah, of course. So first of all, the UK and India obviously made significant progress in strengthening their economic and trade relationship. The Enhanced Trade Partnership was kind of reached, and obviously recently the Free Trade Agreement, the FTA, was signed. These agreements obviously aim to reduce trade barriers, enhance investment flow, and promote regulatory cooperation. So definitely the key sectors that were covered in the UK-India Free Trade Agreement included financial services. So the agreements seek to improve market access for financial institutions, facilitate regulatory alignment, and promote fintech collaboration. And this includes mutual recognition of licenses, ease of capital requirements, and support for cross-border payments. We've obviously seen more in the facilitation of technology, digital trade. So there's provisions related to data flows, cybersecurity, IP rights, digital services, which was central to the agreement, which was aimed to foster innovation and protect digital assets. Also, green energy and sustainability was covered. There was joint investments promoted in renewable energy, electric mobility, and climate resilient infrastructure, which aligns with both countries' commitments under the Paris Agreement. Also, education and mobility, more cooperation in higher education, research, professional mobility was a key focus. So mutual recognition of qualifications and streamlined visa processes. So the proposed EU-India FTA is expected to build on these themes, but with additional emphasis on certain areas. The first of these is sustainable development. So the agreement will likely define the commitments on labour rights, environmental standards, corporate social responsibility, also supply chain resilience in light of global disruptions. The EU FTA aims to strengthen supply chains, linkages in critical sectors such as pharmaceuticals, semiconductors, and also medical devices. Also investment protection, a robust framework for investment protection, including dispute resolution mechanisms, definitely expect to enhance investor confidence. Also market access, so tariff reduction, harmonization of standards, and also removal of non-tariff barriers will facilitate trade in goods and services. From putting my lawyer hat on, from a legal perspective, these agreements will create new opportunities by structuring cross-border investment. They'll reduce regulatory friction and will definitely enhance legal certainty. They also support the development of sector-specific investment strategies, which are aligned with the national priorities, which we spoke about earlier.
I think I have the $1 million question now. Do you think, because obviously this would have a very beneficial impact, because we were talking about the regulatory challenges which are there, and this would smooth out a lot of the issues that would be in there, would make things a lot easier for companies working between India and the EU. Now, I do have a very important $1 million question. When do you think they'll sign it?
Oh, very, very good question. I'm definitely not privy to those conversations. What I expect and hope is that pretty soon, because the trend is heading towards that way. There was so much progress in the Switzerland, Iceland, Norway and Liechtenstein Treaty. It came as a surprise how quickly that was signed. And the UK-Indian Free Trade Agreement took a while to negotiate, but a new regime came into place in the UK and there was a bit more emphasis on getting it done. With the EU, I think EU wants to do trade with India, India wants to do trade with the EU. But yeah, like if you look at investments into India, the US is the number one, followed by Japan, then Singapore, then Germany, then France, and then the UK, and then Italy. So EU countries really want to get up the ladder and see India as a very kind of stable partner, stable democracy, a strong performing economy, and also kind of strong relationships between Indian diaspora based in European countries and India. So it's a very kind of fertile field for cooperation, and yeah, definitely expect it to be signed soon.
Yeah, let's hope so. I think also with what's going on with the US, there is a little bit of added pressure to actually come to an agreement and sign it at this point on both sides, I'd say. So I think that is an extra incentive right now that is occurring. So hopefully it'll happen soon, and it'll help to further promote like commercial and like ties between India and the EU. But I'll leave it to one last question, which is basically if you have any advice for any company that is looking to access the Indian market, invest in the Indian market, or alternatively looking for an investor and looking to partner with potentially an Indian firm or venture capital or a high net worth individual that has actually raised capital through an entity from India, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. So investing in any foreign market requires a good understanding of local dynamics, regulatory frameworks, and also cultural factors as well. So for UK, EU investors looking to enter India, I'd definitely say the following things are key. So the first thing is partnering with local stakeholders. So collaborating with Indian funds or family offices or strategic partners provide valuable insights. They help with market entry and they help mitigate risks. So local partners can assist with regulatory compliance, acquiring talent, and also engaging with customers. Secondly, focusing on high growth sectors. So India offers big opportunities in sectors such as fintech, health tech, edtech, agritech, and renewable energy. So investors should align their strategies with India's development priorities and also consumer trends in India. Thirdly, understanding the regulatory landscape. So familiarity with India's FDI policy, its tax regime, and also sector-specific regulations is essential. Engaging experienced legal and tax advisors can help navigate these complexities and ensure compliance. Fourth, planning for exits. So a clear exit strategy is critical for investment success. So investors should evaluate options such as IPOs, secondary sales, strategic buyouts, and understand regulatory requirements of each. And also embracing ESG and impact investing. So there's definitely a growing emphasis on sustainability and social impact of India. So investors that integrate ESG considerations into investment theses can definitely enhance value creation and stakeholder trust. For Indian investors exploring opportunities in Europe, so vice versa, I recommend conducting thorough due diligence, so understanding local market conditions, legal requirements, and cultural nuances is important. This includes compliance with GDPR, employment laws, and ESG disclosures. Also leveraging the UK as a gateway, so the UK's mature financial ecosystem, common law system, and India-friendly policies make it an ideal entry point for Indian investors targeting Europe. Thirdly, using strategic structures, considering using special purpose vehicles, SPVs, holding companies in treaty jurisdictions to optimize tax efficiency and governance. Also building long-term relationships. So European markets value trust, transparency, long-term commitment. Indian investors should focus on building strong relationships with local stakeholders. Also monitoring geopolitical developments, so like Brexit, EU regulations and geopolitical tensions can impact investment decisions. So staying informed and agile is key to managing risks. So overall, cross-border investments between India and the EU and UK offer immense potential, provided they're underpinned by strategic planning, regulatory compliance, and cultural sensitivity.
I cannot agree more. I think there's great opportunity, but only when you're very thorough about it at the end of the day. So I think that covers everything. Dhruv, thank you very much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. If you have any last things to say about DWF itself and your work, please go ahead as a final few words.
Yes, thank you very much, Alessandro and Luca, for having me here. And I'm so delighted to speak with you. It was really engaging and interesting conversation. And yeah, if you kind of either European investors into India or India investors looking to invest in Europe or intermediate along the system, if you need any legal advice or strategic advice around navigating these markets, you can definitely feel free to reach out. I'm Dhruv Chhatralia at DWF.law. You can drop me an email and be happy to assist, and look forward to kind of helping more participants and stakeholders in the ecosystem and facilitating greater investments between the EU and India.
Fantastic. Well, Dhruv, thank you very much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. I think there are quite a few things that will be a great use to our members and the Meeting Coffee audience. So they'll very much like to hear that, especially right now that everybody's like looking at India, trying to figure it out here in Italy. So I think this is going to be very, very helpful to them. And if there's any need, they can always contact Dhruv at his email that he's just given. Let's hope for the future and for this EU trade deal at the end of the day.
It's trust.
Aside from that, I'll just give a quick plug-in. Obviously, please, if you want to find us instead in Italy, you can find us at ibfitaly.it. We are a networking platform, as I already mentioned, between the Indian and the Italian business community. We organize several events per year dedicated to networking, along with technical events online. I will just switch quickly to Italian and just say the same thing in Italian. Come dicevo anche in italiano, voglio ringraziare Dhruv. Grazie Dhruv, thank you Dhruv. Come sempre potete trovarci a idfitaly.it o anche su LinkedIn alternativamente. Volevo anche ringraziare Luca Vattimo di Meeting Funnel per quest'altro episodio di Meeting Coffee, a cui ora passo la parola. Grazie mille.
Grazie a te Alessandro come sempre per la collaborazione che abbiamo anche insieme a IBF e per coinvolgere un po' le aziende italiane, e thank you Mr. Dhruv for what you shared with us today. We will share this interview on your channel, The Engagement Italian Company. Grazie per essere presenti appunto in questa puntata. Vi ricordo che questa intervista la troverete sul canale Meeting Coffee di Meeting Funnel e iscrivetevi alla nostra community www.meetingfunnel.it. Thank you very much Mr. Dhruv e grazie Alessandro.
Thank you very much all. Thank you.
Thank you very much everyone. It's been a pleasure.